Chapter 71. What is your face getting red for? James' glance ran astutely across the two people. He glanced at them for a short while and smiled knowingly. Sarah immediately thought about James' marriage again. James, look at how content your younger brother is now. You should hurry up and make arrangements to find one too, mother. Don't bother yourself so much with my business. Anyway, you want a grandchild, so you should urge Ryan to try harder. That is more practical. Why did he pull her and Ryan into this again? Lisa hastily straightened her back in an odd manner. Sarah hummed. That's not feasible. You're older than both of them, but you still haven't found a girlfriend. What is this? Lisa understood that from the moment the president took up the post. Many people would question about his marriage. However, James simply never worried about it. He had been in office for about 3 years. Everyone began to worry why Mr. President was still not married. Initially, no one brought this up in the open anymore, but coincidentally, another general election was being held again. Whether or not he could take up an additional term still relied on how the closing months of this year would turn out. Thus, James' marriage was once again brought up as a topic for discussion. Thereafter, Sarah said directly, "The room you'll be using tonight has already been tidied up, all right? I won't annoy you any longer. Go back and rest. Don't chat too long with James, Ryan. Lisa will be terribly bored if she's left alone in the room." Lisa immediately looked at Ryan opposite her. They were staying here again. Knowing that the two brothers had not met for a long time and probably had a lot to talk about, Lisa gently left the spot first. As he watched Lisa leave, James grinned and said to Ryan, "Sister-in-law seems not that bad." Ryan sighed. "Still, we were forced into this." James broke into a smile. He stared at Ryan. "From what I see right now, not everything is because it was forced. You imply that you're also compelled to treat her well." Ryan remarked, "Since I married her, she's my wife. I should treat her a little better. She's only 23 years old. This kind of wedded life is slightly too unfair for her, especially if I don't treat her well." James glanced aside in serious concentration and did not speak. However, James immediately recalled of something in question that day. "You called to ask me about a person, I forgot her name, who accidentally crashed into the caravan of the Glass Palace. The president's house was dubbed the Glazed Tile Palace. Therefore the convoy was also suitably called the Glazed Tile Palace Convoy. They were the tightest security guards on the president's side." Ryan remembers the events of that day. "That's right. She was Lisa's manager. Did she give you any alarm that day?" James' eyes hesitated before getting significantly colder. "No, that's good. What's her name?" "Emily, I think," Ryan said. James nodded his head, his attitude still enigmatic. The two of them talked about vital topics for a little while before returning to their own rooms. James saw Ryan depart and spoke to his general secretary beside him. "Go and examine Emily. Ensure that she didn't leave any evidence of what transpired that day." The general secretary naturally comprehended him. He nodded before taking his leave. Lisa had paced up and down the room for a long time. It was only when she heard the door move that she leaped quickly down from the bed. When she saw Ryan come, Lisa shouted at Ryan with an angry face, "Ryan, what were you doing just now?" Ryan's face was perfectly neutral. "What did I do just now?" Looking at him, counterfeit innocence. Lisa exclaimed even more passionately, "You were touching me secretly under the table." Ryan sat down and raised his head to look at Lisa. "So, what? You were taking liberties with me." Ryan shrugged and continued, "I did that to make our married life appear more realistic." Lisa was utterly dumbstruck. "In that case, your performance just now was natural enough." Ryan grinned and remarked, "You were very natural too." No, my acting talents are awful. I wasn't as natural as you were." Ryan lifted his eyebrows. He smiled and replied, "So what you mean is that your earlier expressions were your true reactions?" Then, when your face became red, it was a natural response at his reply. Lisa's cheeks began to redden even more. "Whose face was red? Do you want me to get a mirror for you to look into?" Ryan replied as he stood up and inched closer to her. Lisa hurriedly took a couple steps backward. No need, Lisa really had to hand it to him in such type of situation. He could actually still play his character so brilliantly. Even now, he acted so colorfully, and making her difficult to discriminate between what was genuine and what Was not. She gazed at James's demanding gaze as he grinned faintly. It was so profound that it felt like he was about to stare into her soul. She hurriedly went into the bathroom as an excuse. She was going to shower, change her clothing, sleep early, and leave this area swiftly. In short, visiting the James residence less often in the future was still more desirable. Even now, she appeared to still be able to feel his lingering touch at the base of her thigh. A flash of lightning darted across and drove her to shake her head desperately to forget the sense of great passion. The next day, Lisa followed the business to participate in the filming of National Winner, a popular variety program with extraordinarily high viewing numbers. The corporation saw this as a really significant matter, and Emily borrowed a very expensive piece of clothes on Lisa's behalf. As she glanced at the clothes and high-heeled shoes in the bag, Emily smiled and added, "These are really not bad. However, the James family should have piles and mounds of clothing that are more expensive than these." Lisa answered, "Really? But I don't really know how to look at labels, so I don't know which ones are expensive. Can you come over next time and help me look?" "Me? Forget it. Does a James residence simply allow anyone to go in?" Can't you just go in any time you want?" Lisa was mildly shocked. Emily could not be bothered to explain to her. "Of course, you can casually go in. That's not the case for the rest of us, all right? Go get ready and do your makeup." Very shortly after, Lisa appeared at the television broadcast station. This program had an exclusive dressing room. Lisa was quite eager all the way and glanced about everywhere. After some while, Sarah arrived too. Upon realizing that Lisa had actually come to participate in the program, she snorted and moved past Lisa. "Now, this program has also downgraded. Any cat or dog can come and join too." Sarah's pretty loud voice spread from behind her. Emily glanced at Lisa and stated to Lisa as if she was only making small talk, "I heard that Samira just had all her schedules cancelled." "I don't know if that's true or false," someone observed. "Her moonlighting at a little town. She even goes for events that pay $10,000 each. It appears like she genuinely needs money." Behind them, Sarah's countenance changed quickly when she heard this. When she thought of James, her heart was definitely terrified. She snorted and raised her head haughtily. In her high heels, she came out and stated, "The air here is really bad. Let's go. We'll hunt for a private dressing room to do my makeup." Sarah exited noisily with her assistant in tow. Lisa stated, "Wherever she goes, she kicks up a fuss." "Seriously?" Emily smiled. However, she saw that her phone was ringing. When she looked at the number, her heart jumped. Before leaving, she claimed to Lisa that she was going out to answer a call. Emily only answered the phone when she got outdoors. "Hello. How are you, Miss Emily? There are some things that I want to discuss with you a bit in person. If it's convenient for you, I can go look for you." Emily drew in a big breath. "I already told you. That day was just an accident. I didn't have any ulterior plans. Can we meet in person to talk?" "All right. If you're worried that I recorded your voice secretly, then let's just meet and talk." Inside. Sarah sneaked looks at Lisa inside. She was so enraged that her face was entirely green. She called her assistant alongside her, over to her and said, "Look for Lisa's clothes later. Do you notice that bag of hers? The clothing she'll be wearing tonight are obviously inside. Later. Just go in." Chapter 72. An accident occurred during filming. A little while later, in the changing room, the assistant's little form slipped in stalthyly. And in the front, Lisa had just finished doing her makeup. She heard the uproar coming from outside, but could not see Sarah anywhere. She could only ask the makeup artist what had happened. The makeup artist said, "The situation must be like this because Nathan arrived," just as she was done speaking. Sure enough, she watched Nathan straight push open the door to the dressing room and enter inside. It was the first time the makeup artist had ever observed Nathan coming to the general dressing room. When she spotted Nathan, she grinned with happiness. Nathan came quickly to Lisa's side. He sat down, grinned, and remarked, "Hey, I see you've lost weight. Is it because you couldn't see me every day after filming stopped? Thus you got more and more emaciated from missing me?" Lisa glanced at him speechlessly. Beside them, the makeup artists were listening to their talk. They did not anticipate Nathan to actually be such a jokester. He was radically different from the impression they had of him prior to this. Furthermore, He was the kind of person who always brought his personal stylist wherever with him. He was not someone whom average makeup artists like them could come into contact with. All of them were quite thrilled to be able to view Nathan so closely this time, after some time. The director sent someone to tell them to hurry up because the recording was about to begin. Lisa rushed to add the finishing touches on her makeup. Then, she put on the clothing that she had brought here herself. She was clothed in a short off-shoulder dress with floral motifs embroidered on it. It was combined with stilettos underneath and made it really comfy to look at. It was quite ideal for participation in a variety presentation like this one. Nathan patted her shoulder. Do your best. Lisa was still a little nervous. She sucked in a big breath before walking inside. In no time, the presentation began along with some music because Nathan was here. The production team did not dare to take things too far. There were relatively few game segments, and they largely had an interview with Nathan as a center point from the side. Lisa watched Olivia step out as well. She glanced at Lisa and snorted. With a scornful attitude, she elevated her head. Then, all of the principal production members came on stage. Lisa stood on the elevated stage as she glanced at the fans and audience, who filled the venue. They were cheering enthusiastically below. The large lights were blazing on Lisa, making her face heat up. Just when Lisa was going to step forward, Olivia shoved her quickly to the side. Lisa blanked out. She still had very little expertise on stage and briefly did not really know how to effectively squeeze herself back in. Right at this moment, she felt Nathan grip her tightly and take her forward to stand next to him. The seasoned and experienced presenter naturally observed this situation instantly. He broke into a smile as he glanced at the squad of individuals lining up appropriately. His glance went across Lisa and Nathan. Earlier, we noticed that when Nathan realized Lisa had no place to stand, he immediately pulled her over to the space beside him instantly. The host made Nathan and Lisa the topic of conversation from behind. Olivia gazed at Lisa standing close to Nathan. Her face was utterly stiff. Lisa's countenance betrayed her small shame at being talked about like way. Then, Nathan added with calm, it's Lisa's first time on stage. She doesn't have a lot of experience as her senior. I must give her a hand. The host quickly replied, Ayo? Nathan is so thoughtful. Lisa? How about it? How does it feel to be cared for by Nathan? Lisa grinned and remarked, it feels. I think that after the shoot, I thought that I may be beaten to death by his admirers. Is the security for your program good? Will you be responsible for sending me back later? Upon hearing this, everyone continued to chuckle. Lisa seemed to progressively develop a feel for this because the discourse concentrated upon Nathan. There were subsequently more topics of conversation regarding her. For the most part of the interview, she genuinely had opportunities all the time. On the other hand, Olivia only had a few. She was addressed only during the introduction and again interviewed for a time. Regarding her recent engagement, apart from that, she did not feature in many frames. Olivia's complexion reddened out. Of fury, she scowled at Lisa, who was smiling and joking in the front. When Lisa was being interviewed, she spoke in a really lively and relaxed manner. It made folks feel at ease. Seeing that the replies to her interview were so excellent, Olivia could not help but think to herself, this was only because she had Nathan's help. HMPH. Olivia thought cruelly. But you won't be able to appreciate it for too long. As she thought this, she gazed viciously at Lisa's stilettos. Now, the MC asked all of the main members of the production team to pick up the sweets in the basket altogether and distribute them to the crowd down below. The audience immediately broke into an uproar. They kept asking for treats, especially when they gazed in Nathan's direction. Lisa had just taken a fistful of sweets. When she flung them down, she already felt that something was amiss. With her shoes frowning, she wanted to look down at it. But again, she did not have time to do so. When she grabbed a fistful of candy again, she just heard her shoe heel move all of a sudden. Lisa's feet slipped under her and she nearly fell immediately. Someone behind her shouted out in alarm. Fortunately, Nathan instantly supported Lisa. Up from beside her. The heel of Lisa's shoe had shattered. Behind, the host froze. Oh no. Your shoe is spoiled. Change into another pair. Lisa's face got extremely red. She realized that the camera was still filming her. In a moment of worry, she lifted her head, grinned and remarked, could it be that I've already gotten this heavy? My high heels can't even sustain my weight. Everyone laughed out loud at hearing this. Lisa made up her decision at that instant and directly removed her shoes. She broke off the heel of the offending high-heeled shoe and easily removed her other shoe as well, with a powerful smack against the steps. The heel of that shoe similarly snapped off nicely. She tossed the heels away hurriedly and put on her shoes under everyone's surprised gazes. All done. The host gazed with his mouth agape. However, his response was still fairly swift. Lisa, you're too tough. Beside her, Nathan also chimed in. Yes, no one in the production team sees her as a woman. Lisa raised her head, looked at the camera lens, and broke into a smile. The full series of spectacular acts earlier was directly stored on the camera below. The director smiled and nodded as he looked on. He did not fail to offer a short reminder to his aide. Leave this part in. This scene looks excellent and has an effect too. We can use it as a preview. The others below the stage could not help but glance at Lisa as well. Contrary to anticipation, this last was fairly decisive. Olivia snorted at the back. She felt much more refreshed seeing Lisa disgrace herself in the front. It was just that she did not anticipate Lisa to genuinely keep calm in the crisis and directly smooth over the disgrace. It was really a pity that she did not take a terrible tumble. Lisa returned to the filming. She looked back and coincidentally met Olivia's proud stare. She immediately started thinking. Until the completion of the program, everything moved nicely. Nathan went off the stage and stared at Lisa. Is your leg all right? Lisa raised her head and grinned. I'm fine. Thank you for today. Nathan responded. What's the point of only saying it? Next time, treat me to a meal. Lisa agreed easily. All right. Definitely. Thereafter, she watched Olivia go past her from the side with her head held high. By this point, Sarah had already returned. What exactly happened just now? Sarah had likewise been horrified upon seeing such a terrifying scenario from below. Lisa picked up her high shoes. I don't know what happened. These shoes are presumably pretty expensive. Sarah lifted up the shoes to examine them for a time. She added, this was obviously ruined by someone. There are slash marks over here. Lisa squinted her eyes, snorted, and added, I know. Who did this? Olivia. Who else could it be but her? Lisa responded, that's enough. The Carter family doesn't even recognize that they still have me as a daughter. You've been with me for such a long time, so you should know this too. Ryan grinned and looked at Lisa. I really don't quite understand the ways of you rich people. Our family members are merely civilians. It's good enough if I deposit money into my mother's account every month for everyday necessities and provide for my brother's education. Lisa said. What civilians? I'm a civilian too, Ryan said. All right. Both of us are part of a generation that doesn't have any backup and must depend on our own hard work. Still, you should be in a lot better place now. Look, James treats you extremely well, and your career is on the rise. Lisa, oh, please, still. It's just my career that's reliable. As for men, why? I think James is very reliable too. Lisa stated, he just has a greater sense of responsibility towards me right now. Responsibility? Ryan asked in a puzzled tone. Lisa said, anyway, it's a very complicated matter. Forget it. I'll take it one step at a time. In any event, I have to work hard at my career. Ryan answered, that's right. It's still your career that's the most reliable. You can only hold money in your hand. Ryan smiled and glanced at her extremely stupid manner. The next day, a video of Lisa on the show was instantly shared on the internet by a netizen at the scene. In the video, she knocked the heel of her shoe off cleanly before properly putting on the torn shoes again and completing the show as if nothing had occurred. Everyone felt that while doing this, Lisa was really professional. Furthermore, her actions were really engaging. It made one instinctively think about how tough this girl was. She was lovely but did not have an ounce of pretentiousness or affectation, and was really relaxed. The fan count on Lisa's Weibo page continues to soar. There were already thousands of comments on her newest Weibo post. At home, Lisa surfed her Weibo for the most part of the day. She kept gazing at those comments and felt her ego inflate to a significant level. News of that day was published fairly shortly. The headline was that Lisa and Nathan had participated in the show together and had continuous sparks of chemistry. During the filming, Nathan dashingly protected Lisa, while Lisa worried about being attacked by his supporters. Compared to all the female actresses who went on that day, Lisa was actually the one with the most exposure and the largest piece of news among them. The employer was quite delighted and added that the director had personally praised Lisa and indicated that she had a lot of promise in the future. James gazed at Lisa resting on the couch with a funny smile. He walked over and said, "What happened, Lisa?" Added triumphantly, "I suddenly feel that I have the potential to become famous. Look, the amount of fans I have currently has already exceeded a few million, really?" James brushed his gaze over it and smiled. He felt that she was pretty readily satisfied. "Nathan's fan count has probably hit tens of millions." Lisa raised her head. "Nathan is a super A-list celebrity, all right. I'm simply a rookie." Lisa returned to the room and prepared to sleep. But then, she observed that the wardrobe in the room seemed to have just been organized. She unlocked the wardrobe, took out her pajamas, and went to the bathroom for a shower. It was only after she washed did she realize that this piece of apparel was a touch weird. She only discovered when she looked in the mirror that the pajama was nearly half translucent. Lisa cried glumly towards the outdoors. "James, who bought these pajamas? Why are they so weird?" James said. "How is it weird?" Lisa added. "Anyway, it's just very weird." James frowned. He opened the wardrobe and took a peek before calling back. "I think they're new clothes sent over by Mother from home." Lisa replied gloomily, "Your mother's taste is too wicked. Why did she send over such seductive clothes? Perhaps she really wants to have grandchildren sooner." He smiled and said. Lisa glanced dejectedly at herself in the mirror. "Help me get another pair of pajamas." James looked at the various pajamas. Every item definitely had its highlight. It made him a little inquisitive unconsciously. He did not know how exactly these pajamas, which were full of temptation, would appear on Lisa's body. After inspecting all of them over, he still did not find a normal pair of pajamas. It appeared like his mother had made up her mind this time to properly bring the two of them together. This was the reason why she had sent over such loads of clothing. James said, "There's no wearable clothing. Then what should I do?" Lisa hesitated for a minute before saying, "Lend me your clothes first so I can wear them." "Mine?" James answered, "Just put up with it and wear it." "What area of your body have I not seen before?" "I don't want to. Don't worry after I wear it. I won't return it to you. You have so many outfits that you haven't worn before. It's no hardship for you to lend me a piece anyway." After a little while, James banged on the door from outside. Lisa slowly opened a slice of the door. Inside, the mist from her earlier shower flowed outwards languidly and was accompanied by the aroma of her body wash. James gazed at her face, which was covered into red areas after her shower. Her look aroused his sensation of protectiveness, like a baby's face would, and he could not help but feel his body jerk. Lisa did not notice his weird behavior. She yanked the clothing and slammed the door in a rush. In no time, she changed her clothing and headed out. Lisa was smugly dressed in his large clothing and added happily, "I'm still the smart one." Upon hearing the sound, James turned his head. Immediately he saw a white mass drift by. Lisa was wearing his pajamas. It was large and bloated as well, making her body appear even more delicate and little. The sleeves were excessively long, so they were rolled up. The white expanse of her arms swayed back and forth like the roots of a lotus. The collar was excessively broad, so the sparkling white of her collarbones underneath and her bare chest could dimly be seen. Instantly, James turned his head away. His Adam's apple was softly moving back and forth naturally. A woman wearing a man's pajama made one feel that the connection was quite ambiguous. It very simply made one think numerous odd notions. James turned his head. "Lisa, change back into your own clothes." Lisa turned her head in disbelief. "Why?" "I'll get someone to buy you clothes." He stood up as he said this. He did not stare at her enrapturing physique as he opened the door. Lisa twisted her lip. "But I won't ruin it by wearing it." All right, since you don't like it, I'll just return the garments to you," Lisa remarked. "But if you get someone to change the clothes, wouldn't Mother find it weird and suspect our marital relationship after all?" If they were husband and wife, wearing clothes that were translucent should not be a huge problem either. James stared at Lisa and walked over. He whispered softly, "I have a way to dispel their suspicions." Lisa glanced at him in confusion. The corner of James' mouth lifted at once. He directly took up that translucent piece of clothes belonging to Lisa. The moment he pushed power, with his two hands, the thin fabric readily ripped apart. Lisa's face turned absolutely green. James opened the door and remarked, "What clothing is this?" With one tear. "It's ruined. Help change Madame's clothing to sturdier ones." He placed the entirely shredded pair of pajamas aside. A few maids could not help but stare speechlessly at one another. As they glanced at it, it was the garment unable to sustain the extreme excitement. Behind them, Lisa's face was absolutely red. "This damn James." The maids promptly retrieved a typical set of pajamas. They brushed their eyes over them with fully seductive gazes. It seemed as if they were saying, "You were really a touch too emotional." Chapter 74. Don't move. Keep still in your sleep. Door closed before their eyes. Lisa gazed fixedly at James, whose expression was totally serene. James lifted his eyebrows. "Why?" Lisa pounded her foot in his way. HMPH. She then grabbed the pajamas and hurried inside. As he watched her go in, James smiled with his lips squeezed together. However, he could not help but feel a little melancholy as he glanced at those pajamas in their varied colors and styles. She had a pretty lovely figure. She would undoubtedly look extremely beautiful in these clothing. James took up the clothing and stared at them slightly regretfully. However, he heard the door open noisily in an instant before Lisa came out from within. After changing her clothes, Lisa finally exhaled a sigh of relief. The pajamas she was wearing was a long linen gown. It did not show off her shape at all, and she looked like a water bucket. Lisa thought that it was fantastic. James flung down the pajamas and lifted his head. He focused his eyes and stared at the garments on Lisa's body. These servants. What garments did they get for her? Lisa returned to the bed comfortably. After sitting down with her legs crossed, she casually took up a nail clipper and began clipping her toenails. James gazed at her with his face absolutely astonished. Lisa's silky and creamy legs were crossed. In the middle of her legs, a sliver of her white underwear could definitely be seen from such a small sliver. He could see her triangle-shaped underpants, which was laced with a thin flowery border. It had sliced into her flesh slightly and left minor traces. Her legs were entangled, and James could not help but walk a few steps closer to her. He felt melancholy as he gazed at her lewd antics, yet he could not help but shift his focus towards her. How he longed she could move again. That way, more of the delicate flesh underneath would undoubtedly be exposed. After she was done with her toenails, Lisa grabbed her feet and blew on them. When her feet were lifted up, her flesh inside was even more greatly revealed. James felt a wave of desire in his lower belly and eventually could not tolerate it any longer. "Lisa, can you sit even slightly like a woman?" Lisa lifted her head. "What did I do? What did you do? Do you want to know?" James lifted his eyebrows. Before Lisa could even react, James had already stepped up to her. He lowered his head and placed an arm on both sides of her. He encompassed her tiny and petite body in his grip and appeared inches away from forcing her down. Lisa's eyes blazed as she gazed at the man who approached her all of a sudden. He stood immediately in front of her, and his look was deep and hidden. His gaze landed on her frontal chest. It was as if his enormous hand had touched it all over. Feeling nervous, Lisa tried to create some distance between them. "What are you doing?" Lisa's gaze was blazing. "You started seducing me first." James' breath was like the perfume of orchids. "You? I totally did not. Don't ever wear clothes like these when you're beside a man." With a warning stare, he raked his eyes all over her body. His voice was low and velvety like the wonderful sound of a cello. "Why?" "Why? Because it's too easy to remove." His eyes followed the wide hem of the robe as if he could stare through this piece of garment and into her body. Lisa froze. In the following minute, his long arms directly clasped her in his hug. Lisa was absolutely surprised and she tumbled onto the nice blanket on the bed. She swiftly grabbed his hand and struggled. "James, you're behaving like a hoodlum. Shh, don't move." His long arms reached over and directly wrapped around her torso. His seductive speech was like a wonderful song reverberating in her ears. It had a particular type of magic. "Otherwise, I'll really behave like a hoodlum." But just when Lisa was about to move, she really impalpably felt something of some sort behind her. It was so blatantly poking up against her body, she froze. When she enlarged her eyes and found out what that thing was, her heart jumped, and she did not dare to move carelessly. James just carried her in his arms like this. All right. That's all. Sleep. What? James frowned. I'm telling you to sleep. Do you not understand? But or do you want exercise for a bit before sleeping? He was practically chewing on her ear as he murmured this. His voice conveyed a workout of a different type. Lisa's body was incredibly stiff and inflexible. She merely felt that all of her blood seemed to be flowing backward. Her brain also followed suit and grew dizzy. No need. No need. Sleep, she said hurriedly. She lay in his embrace for a long time. She just breathed a sigh of relief when she seemed to feel the thing sticking up behind her body eventually relaxed slowly by a big degree. James felt the woman in his arms become more and more comfortable. Gradually, her shallow breaths began to smooth out as her noises traveled across to him. He likewise gently relaxed his body. However, some component of his anatomy was plainly not as intelligent as its counterparts. He sighed audibly as he looked at the woman sleeping sweetly in his arms. He carefully altered the position of his arms. He dropped his head and could still smell the faint perfume of her hair. He shut his eyes firmly. She was definitely a dumb woman. The next day, when Lisa woke up, she saw that James was already gone. Lisa raced out. From the door of the dining room, she noticed James eating. James' complexion did not seem good. He appeared as if he had not slept properly. Lisa stepped closer to him guiltily. She recalled that she had fallen asleep in his hug the night before. However, she had already forgotten what transpired after that. She asked James, "Why? Was my sleeping posture last night not too good? To be honest, I tend to toss and turn in my sleep." "No." He only moved his arm uneasily. His arm was a touch stiff from having been used by her as a pillow. This was the outcome of not moving it at all for a night. The servants soon served some breakfast to Lisa. Lisa raised her head and thanked them cordially. After eating breakfast, Lisa wanted to head to work. James answered, "I'll take you along with me." "Let's go." Lisa stood up hurriedly. "Really, I'll go change my clothes." As he watched Lisa flee inside, James shook his head wordlessly. She was always behaving in a wild manner. The maid smiled and tidied up the dishes. She remarked, "Sir, do we really have to change all of the clothes that ma'am sent over for madam?" James remembers those strangely shaped pajamas. "Throw them all away, all right. But it's a bit of a pity. They're all in madam's size," the maid answered. "The rest of the pajamas have already been put up." James nodded. The maid heard the noises that Lisa was making inside. They believed that she was looking for clothes again. James muttered gloomily, "She's seriously clumsy." The maid grinned and remarked, "People are bound to have some shortcomings. Madam is such a lovely person, thus, it doesn't really matter that she's clumsy. She's a good person." James lifted his eyebrows. The maid answered, "Yes." In short time, Lisa walked out. James glanced silently at her figure, narrowing his eyes. Lisa walked out and stated in a shocked tone, "What happened?" James stood up, calmly picked up his clothes and put them on. "Nothing. Let's go." Chapter 75. I'll Go Shopping Together with You television series finally launched. With a lot of hoopla. During this period, advertisements for Swords of Love could be seen along every street and alley. Sometimes Lisa might see them even when she went shopping. But right now, she was just beginning to acquire some exposure. After all, she was not known to everyone like Nathan was. Thus, the people outside still did not recognize her. As a result, even if she went out shopping, no one noticed her as well. She was still just like an ordinary individual. But it was evident that the television series was already garnering attention. From the broadcast of its first episode, its viewership rate stood firmly in first place, and its connected news totally occupied the list of hot issues. And the few primary leads inside began to be hooked into various techniques to manufacture hype. Naturally, the response from Nathan's fans was overwhelming. Every day, his supporters followed him around noisily as he attended his promotional activities and made everyone envy. Sarah likes to keep a low profile. She did not really like to attend promotional activities and only went to several key sites. One could tell that she had the style of a tremendously accomplished person, and a little actress like Lisa could merely move to wherever she was needed. She followed suit and attended the promotional activities to the point that her legs nearly snapped. However, she also enjoyed many rewards. Gradually, she started becoming able to react to the reporters' inquiries. She began to learn from Nathan, and was able to beat about the bush. Nathan took very good care of her the entire time, and as a result, her reputation began to improve as well. Furthermore, what was even more gratifying was that Lisa's tough girl portrayal in the television series was really well received. In no time, there were already people claiming to be Lisa's fans, and even a fan club was founded. Lisa recognized that this was merely a transitory impact. Whether or not this occurrence could persist still relied on how her future progressed. However, even if this was the case, she was already quite satisfied. On the day that they went to the Ryan residence to have a meal, the television series was coincidentally transmitted on the television. Ryan immediately noticed Lisa in the television series. She was holding a whip in her hand and looks unrestrained and handsome. She looked incredibly dashing. Contrary to what Ryan had assumed, Lisa had such a side to her. He could not help but take another look at the television series. Even if he never watched any, Lisa was typically such a dazed person. He could not tell that she in reality had quite the flair for acting. After the two of them ate at the Ryan residence, they prepared to return to their own home. While they were waiting at the entry for the driver to pick them up, Lisa suddenly exclaimed, "Actually, this place is pretty close to the house. Why do we have to insist on waiting for the driver to come? Let's simply walk back. We ate so much for dinner. It'll be wonderful for our digestion." Behind them, just when Ethan wanted to rush up to them and say anything to stop them, he noticed Ryan stretching out a hand quietly. He indicated for Ethan to swallow what he was about to say. Ryan stared at the sky and quietly provided a cue to the security behind him with his eyes. Thereafter, he nodded at Lisa. "All right, we'll do as you said." When they arrived outdoors, the bodyguards stretched themselves out somewhat. Ryan turned his head and took a glimpse. Only after establishing that everything was fine did he relax and go outward along the street. With Lisa. This was a well-known area for the wealthy in the city. The back of the area was packed with homes attached with gardens and numerous manors. Not many people resided there, however. Lisa sensed that there were even fewer people than normal today. She did not see that there were many bodyguards trailing after her. She strolled on the route feeling at ease in her heart. The lighting beside the road shined down on a narrow stone-tiled lane. It appeared quite serene and secluded. Looking into the distance, there was a nice vibe to it. With one look, Lisa observed someone selling handcrafted soaps at the side. She was fascinated by those little trinkets and immediately exclaimed before hurriedly walking over, "Ryan, look, this little bunny was made so realistically. I want to buy it." When the shop owner observed the people trailing behind them, he just felt that their aura was remarkable. They just did not look like average individuals. Upon witnessing the bodyguards clothed in black who were discreetly following behind them, a shudder rushed down his back. Thus, he was very afraid and deferential to the few significant people who had unexpectedly come to his modest shop. He remarked hesitantly to Lisa, "These are all handmade. They can simply be manufactured on the fly and undoubtedly have the most natural fragrances." Upon hearing this, Ryan added to Lisa, "If you like it, you can try making one yourself." Lisa answered, "Really? Can I make one on my own?" The shop owner promptly answered, "Of course you can. Here we supply molds for consumers to try on their own." Immediately, Lisa was quite thrilled and smiled till she was grinning from ear to ear. As Ryan noticed this, the corners of his lips likewise began to pull up slightly. Lisa was definitely a lady who was very easy to fulfill. Such a modest thing might even make her smile so blissfully. The two of them entered the shop. The bodyguards outside instinctively came together and discreetly waited outside. As Lisa stared at Ryan, she burst into a naughty smile. "Excuse me, I want to make a handcrafted soap that isn't his shape. Do you believe that's possible?" The shop owner answered that it's not impossible either. Ryan presently stood by her. Upon hearing this, he looked down and smiled. "Don't you think that's a little inappropriate?" "How is it inappropriate?" Lisa said. Ryan snickered. A corner of his mouth raised softly. "Handmade soaps are used when you're showering. So you mean that you expect to use a soap manufactured in my likeness to massage all over your body when you're showering?" Lisa's face got extremely red. "I don't mean that at all." Ryan lowered his head again slightly. As he glanced at her little neck, he quietly took in a breath. He purposefully put himself close to her hair and gently replied, "It's all right. I look forward to it much. Go ahead. No. I don't want to do it anymore. I want to make a tiny bunny too. HMPH. The business owner eventually exhaled a sigh of relief upon hearing this. From the side, he helped Lisa while she created the soap. However, Lisa's ability was plainly not strong. The soap she created looked quite weird, Ryan added. Look at how clumsy you are. He could not take that idiotic manner of hers. So he also personally began to help her make it. How should I do this? Stupid. Move your hand over a bit. Does this look like a rabbit, Lisa? How can you be this stupid? Lisa glanced at him speechlessly. Anyone would get anxious with you rushing them like this. The two of them bickered noisily. At any rate, they ultimately managed to manufacture a bar of homemade soap. The shop owner grinned and said, I can engrave your name on the soap to commemorate this. Ryan agreed and continued, in that case, just engrave it. Lisa's heart jolted quickly as she gazed at her own name and Ryan's name carved together at the side. The smile on her face intensified significantly after a lot of problems. The two of them had finally finished building it. The shop owner wrapped the soap into a beautiful bag for them. Ryan nonchalantly scooped out the bag and continued going out with Lisa. Lisa exclaimed with a big sense of success, I'm really talented. I made it appear so beautiful. It was clearly made entirely by me. Nonsense. I set down the foundations. You only made it by standing on the shoulders of a giant, all right? As long as you're happy. Hey, there's ice cream. I want to eat that. Ryan glanced over at it. It was ice cream that was created on the spot. Only young children were consuming the ice cream. It's unhygienic. Don't eat it. No. No. Even if it's dirty. I won't get ill if I'm eating it. Hubby, purchase one for me. Just then, a familiar voice rang out from behind Ryan. Why are you here? To think that they would meet Emily here.